Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in to Vidiot Entertainment Studios for this episode of Vidiot Movie Reviews. I'm the Nerdlust Daddy, and today we continue our series reviewing every North American live-action video game film adaptation theatrical release. And today, we end up stumbling back onto the Paul W.S. Anderson train once again as we review 2020's Monster Hunter.
Are you chitting me? I thought we was done with hymns.
Me too, Pidds. But it seems as if Hollywood isn't, so let's jump into this one and see if it's any good. Now, Monster Hunter was released in North American theaters on December 18, 2020. At this time, well over 20 games in combinations of mainline, spin-off, and re-releases had been released in the game series. Of course, we're just going to focus on the mainline releases, which are Monster Hunter, Monster Hunter 2, Monster Hunter Tri, Monster Hunter 4, and Monster Hunter World. We're going to use all of these for a general loose comparison, as the film is a loose adaptation of the series. Now, the plot of the games is quite threadbare for most of them, although later entries do start adding in lore. The gist of it is that it takes place within the New World, a land where giant monsters still exist and roam free. In this world exist what are known as hunters. These hunters typically are members of the hunting guild and embark upon quests to local towns, villages, and cities where their help is needed due to a monster threatening the local inhabitants. Once there, the location acts as a base of operations where the hunters head off on quests to track and kill monsters, as well as gather monster parts and other items to create new weapons, armor, and items that allow them to progressively grow stronger and face progressively stronger monsters. Eventually, hunters will grow strong enough to take on the monster that is the main threat to the inhabitants of the location. The film somewhat follows these basic plot points and dynamics, but does certainly create its own story since the plot of the games is fairly thin as is. The film presents us with a United Nations security team led by U.S. Ranger Natalie Artemis that's searching the desert for another missing team of soldiers. During their search, a giant lightning storm comes out of nowhere and overtakes the security team. In the process, the storm seems to have transported the team to another world. Once there, they're attacked by a giant monster called a Diablos. Seeking refuge from the monster, they hide in a cave, only to be faced with having to fend off a swarm of spider-like monsters known as Nersilla. After being injected with a paralyzing agent by one of them, Artemis wakes up in the Nersilla lair and seeks escape. Upon escaping, she runs into one of the world's inhabitants, a hunter, that had been separated from his team during an attack by the Diablos. After a brief misunderstanding, they quickly form a bond, and the hunter points out a tower in the distance with that strange storm swirling around it. Realizing that this must be the source of the storm that brought her here, both Artemis and the hunter work together to figure out how to overcome the Diablos and reach the tower. Alright, so the plots don't exactly match up, but the film does at least meet the main plot points of the games, which is taking on giant monsters against seemingly insurmountable odds. Considering the games themselves are very thin in plot and mainly just focus on fighting giant monsters and going through a weapons and armor crafting progression loop, I really can't fault them having to come up with an original plot that places our protagonists within these similar situations. It does its job in getting the action moving, so I can give it a passing hawoo. Pidds, what did you think of the plot?
Hawoo.
So what about the setting and world representation? Locations within the film mostly center around a desert landscape, and a cavernous one for a portion of the film, but we do see a tropical or oasis-type landscape as well. The games involve hunts within many different biomes, just like these, so this works. Monster designs seem to be pulled right from the games as they look spot on, or at most have very slight differences that only hardcore fans will notice or be bothered by. Costuming looks good, as the characters do seem as if they might come right from the games. We also get to see many of the hunter's weapons, such as the dual swords, a bow, a greatsword, and a hammer that all look accurate to their counterparts in the games. Not only that, but they actually took the time to even implement a representation of crafting a weapon from a monster's parts and then using it against a stronger monster. Overall, they did a good job of representation, which at times surprised me with how far they went to represent subtle yet key aspects of the games, such as the aforementioned weapon creation. Setting and world representation gets a hawoo from me. Pidds, what did you think of them?
Hawoo!
Let's dive into our characters, and I'll be upfront here as we're only going to cover a few of them since the rest are not worth discussing, as the majority of the film revolves around two main characters. Of course, as usual, we'll also be only focusing on the main characters from the games, or main characters or major stars in the movie. So let's start with the Admiral, played by the incomparable Ron Perlman, known for the TV series Sons of Anarchy, as well as the films Hellboy and its sequel The Golden Army, along with countless other TV and film credits. He plays the leader of a group of hunters in the New World. The look and representation of style and weapons are good for this character, but he gets little screen time. Personality-wise, he comes off as a man who looks out for his group and will do whatever it costs to keep them safe. Overall, what we get here is a typical Ron Perlman role of the tough yet caring guy, but in just a very bite-sized portion. I think the limited screen time is a disservice as you never get to grow with him, and it makes him come off as a bit of a cheesy stereotype and adaptation. Still, it isn't terrible, so I can give this character at least a passing hawoo. Pidds, what did you think of him?
Hawoo!
The Hunter, portrayed by martial arts superstar Tony Jaa, known for his roles in films such as the Ong Bak series, Furious 7, and The Protector to name a few. He takes on the role of the native to the New World and hunter by trade, a mostly speechless man that needs few words and speaks heavily through actions, mostly due to the language barrier between himself and Artemis. The portrayal is good from the veteran action star, and the character plays well off of Artemis. They seem to have a genuine understanding and camaraderie between one another, despite the language barrier. It's very interesting watching the two interact, as well as seeing Tony bring this character to life on screen. A definite hawoo from me here. Pidds, what did you think of the Hunter?
Hawoo!
Natalie Artemis, played by Mila Jovovich of the Fifth Element fame, as well as every damn Paul W.S. Anderson Resident Evil film ever made. Taking on the role of Artemis, she brings forth the sense of a strong leader, and one that is willing to do what it takes to take care of her squad. Furthermore, she creates an air of determination and survivalism that exudes within particular scenes. She also has great chemistry with the character of the Hunter. Even though the screen time with them is filled with little verbal communication, it's still engaging watching them interact and communicate in other ways to work together. She gets a hawoo from me. Pidds, what did you think of Artemis?
Hawoo!
Time to let final verdicts roll in. The plot is good, given that it's an original one, since the games themselves provide little backstory to work with. It at least gives a good setup for the events to come. Setting and world representation are good and at times surprisingly accurate in their representation, particularly regarding the monsters, and especially going the extra mile by showing weapon crafting mechanics found within the games. And even though we have a very small cast to deal with during the majority of the film, that also doesn't verbally communicate often, both the Hunter and Artemis are portrayed in such a way that they maintain their grasp upon the audience. Let's check with the Pidds first and see what he thinks of this one. Pidds, what did you think of Monster Hunter?
Hawoo!
I agree. I was pleasantly surprised by this film. The action is exciting, and the limited cast doesn't bring the movie down. It helps elevate the feeling of fragile lone humans trying to fend off monsters that are much bigger than them against insurmountable odds. And again, I was very surprised with some of the levels of detail regarding things they chose to represent within the film from the games that could have been easily overlooked. I can give this one a 7s out of 10s. It's a good movie that is at the peak of above average. A bit of cheesiness and an abrupt ending that hints at a potential sequel bring it down a bit, but I can easily recommend this to both fans of the Monster Hunter games, as well as fans of action-adventure, giant monster type films. I think both groups will enjoy this film thoroughly. The Pidds and I want to thank you all for once again tuning into Vidiot Entertainment Studios for this episode of Vidiot Movie Reviews. If you enjoyed our video, please be sure to comment, like, subscribe, and share to show your support. And also, don't forget to check us out on Twitch, as well as follow us on Twitter. Until next time, I'm the Nerdless Daddy reminding you all to not be chit futters to each other. Body autonomy for all, reproductive rights for women, and peace, love, and happiness to all. Take us home, Pidds.
Thank yous all again for watching. We'll see yous again next week.